Well, many thanks for speaking to Times Now, Ambassador Chaz Freeman. You, of course, been an Assistant Secretary of Defense, have also served as the former American ambassador to Saudi Arabia. Thanks for speaking to Times Now. We're, of course, reaching out to you so that you can share your insights about the evolving situation in the Middle East as it stands today. There is a ceasefire, but do you believe it will hold?
I think it's a make-believe ceasefire, rather resembling the one in Gaza. That is a ceasefire that is in which no one ceases fire. Nothing is resolved. And I don't think the various parties to this, really the only United States and Iran are the only parties to this, brokered by Pakistan. I think it's an embarrassment to Pakistan that the Trump administration is not living up to the terms that were apparently reached in the mediation. Pakistan had the backing of China as mediator. The joint Pakistani-Chinese statement by the foreign ministers about a week ago was an important element in this. But I'm sorry to say that once again, the United States is proving unreliable in terms of keeping its word. The major issues are, of course, Lebanon, which was explicitly referred to by the Pakistani announcement, the Prime Minister's announcement.
Yes.
The United States now sides with Israel in declaring that reference to Lebanon meant nothing. The other issue is, of course, the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, and it's not going to relinquish that control. So to the extent that this so-called ceasefire produces anything, it will consolidate Iran's strategic position at the expense of the United States, the Gulf Arabs, and Israel.
But Ambassador Freeman, there is, of course, a clear contradiction in terms of whether or not Lebanon was part of the ceasefire. You rightly mentioned that the Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif had explicitly mentioned the conflict in Lebanon as well as being part of the terms. But the American administration has consistently maintained that that wasn't part of the agreed upon draft, if at all there was one, whether that's J.D. Vance, whether that's Caroline Leavitt, the spokesperson of the White House. They all seem to be saying that Lebanon was never part of the deal. Now, who are you inclined to believe?
I must say, I believe the Pakistani Prime Minister. This is a common pattern. We saw this with the so-called ceasefire in Gaza, which was no ceasefire at all. Various agreements were attributed by the United States to Hamas, which had not agreed to those things. Other things that were attributed to Israel, Israel apparently hadn't agreed to. So this is yet another example of, I'm sorry to say, as a retired professional diplomat, another example of amateur hour in diplomacy. People with no understanding of the issues, of the region they're dealing with, of the issues as seen by the other side, no empathy. And as you mentioned, there may or may not be a text. I don't think there is a text. There is a text of the 10 points that Iran put forward.
Yeah.
There is a text of the 15 points that the United States put forward. But this is yet another so-called napkin agreement, meaning something written on a napkin in a hotel bar with no standing legally that can be enforced.
But do you believe that the talks that the Pakistanis are planning to now host in Islamabad, and J.D. Vance is supposed to be one of the attendees, the Iranians are expected to send their representatives there. Is that a non-starter in your eyes, sir, or will it actually yield something?
Well, I don't know whether those talks are going to happen at all, because I think the Iranians have made it clear that they regard the United States as in violation of the understandings reached through the mediation of Pakistan. So I don't know whether there will be a meeting. If there is a meeting, I don't expect it to produce anything except confirmation of the fact that there has been no meeting of the minds here, no agreement based on common understandings. So what will happen, I think, is, again, I go back to the Gaza example. You have a so-called ceasefire in place, which is not stopping the fighting. The fighting will go on, presumably at a lower level of intensity. I don't think the United States has much leverage here. We have done huge damage to Iran. Iran has suffered vastly more damage than it has inflicted on others. It has battered Israel. It has roughed up the Gulf Arab states. But it has shown that it can take enormous punishment and still continue to fight. So the notion that somehow a further threat of the obscene sort that President Trump issued on Easter Sunday would somehow cause the Iranians to capitulate is absurd, really, I think.
And whatever one might say about the regime, it's still very much there. So any stated intention of displacing that regime has also not materialized. But where do you see this heading, Ambassador Freeman? Because Donald Trump has said that the hands of the United States are very much on the trigger button, that in the event that there is any breach of that ceasefire on the part of Iran, then the American military machinery that's present in the Middle East will definitely get activated. There are also 57,000 American troops in different parts of the Middle East right now, which is typically more than about at least 10 to 15,000 more than they would typically have. Do you expect any kind of a ground intervention, or have we seen the highest escalation ladder that's already been reached?
Well, I think, let me respond to that with several comments. First, there was no clear statement of objectives for this war. One objective apparently was to stop the alleged Iranian nuclear program. That objective was not only not achieved, but Iran is now determined to build a nuclear weapon. The people who were murdered on February 28th were the opponents of building weapons of mass destruction, which they declared to be haram, forbidden in Islam. Those people are gone. They've been succeeded by the proponents of building a nuclear weapon. Second, to the extent the objective was regime change, the regime has been consolidated and made more radical and hardline, not more compromising in nature. Third, if the objective was to exhaust Iran's missile inventory, that has also failed. Iran apparently has at least 1,000 additional missiles with which it can attack either Israel or its neighbors or both. And Iran, in fact, to go to your last point, if the United States were to resume this war at the level of intensity that we prosecuted it, Iran has said it will not restrict its response to the region. It will move out beyond the region. And it's issued a list of war criminals, including quite a number of leaders in Europe who have aided and abetted the American assault on Iran. Let me just add one last point, which is crucial. This ceasefire, so-called, was sought by the United States, not by Israel, by the United States. Why? Because our capacity to defend ourselves and Israel by intercepting missiles has been depleted and exhausted. So we are able to bomb Iran, but we cannot defend ourselves. That is not a strong position from which to argue if there is a meeting in Islamabad on Friday, tomorrow.
As somebody who served in Saudi Arabia and knows the region very well, do you believe that there is frustration on the part of America's allies in that region as well with the kind of approach that it might have adopted? Because there were certain reports coming through that the Saudis want America to finish the job. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. But what's your reading of the situation in terms of how America's allies are approaching this entire matter? Are they frustrated with the conduct of Donald Trump?
Well, they've been put in an impossible position. They basically have a choice between diplomacy with Iran, which can open the strait to their vessels and their oil exports and their imports through the strait, or war, and war cannot open the strait. they cannot survive without that strait being opened. So the United States has inadvertently put them in a position where they have to negotiate with Iran. It is true that the United Arab Emirates has been very hardline, and very much in concert with Israel under the so-called Abraham Accords.
Yeah.
Presumably they are cooperating. Therefore, Iran has been particularly cruel to the UAE, done a lot of damage. I think UAE, however, is alone in that position. I see no evidence that Saudi Arabia has echoed the UAE's demands that the war be continued to the bitter end, but quite the contrary. And I know that Donald Trump has insulted Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince and de facto executive authority in Saudi Arabia, in very crude and vulgar terms. And I don't think that that sort of insult passes unnoticed. So there is a rumor that Saudi Arabia has decided to halt its further purchases of American weaponry, one of the major markets for the United States for arms sales has been Saudi Arabia. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it's clear that the Saudis and others in the Gulf feel they have been blindsided. They were not consulted about the opening of this war. They were not consulted about the so-called ceasefire. And if anything, Israel is even more upset than they about this.
You're right about that. I mean, do you believe that the dissonance between Netanyahu and Trump on how things have now transpired, including, of course, the ceasefire, even as Netanyahu continues his operations in Lebanon, do you believe that dissonance between the two is a potential deal breaker here?
Yes, I think so. That is to say, I'm not a deal breaker because I'm not sure there ever was a deal.
Yes.
But anyway, something that frustrates any effort to reach an end to the war, an agreed end to the war. And I note that Prime Minister Netanyahu, says he's waited 40 years to be able to persuade an American president to do to Iran what Israel does not have the capacity to do on its own. And he was jubilant at the opening of the war. He convinced Donald Trump, apparently, that it would be over in 3 or 4 days. Apparently, the United States told Turkey to expect the war to be over on Tuesday after starting on Saturday. That didn't happen. And Israel has been battered. We don't know how badly Israel has been battered because of military censorship, which has been very effective. So we really don't know what damage, how deep the damage in Israel is. But we're beginning to hear complaints from ordinary Israelis about the intolerability of life under these conditions. So I think Prime Minister Netanyahu, who hoped to go out of office with the legacy of a greater Israel, including southern Lebanon, and having eliminated the Iranian opposition to Israeli territorial expansion, is instead going to go out of office in disgrace. Or to sum all this up, having failed to achieve regime change in Iran, we may have inadvertently produced regime change in Israel.
Yeah, that's because Israel is heading to elections towards the end of the year. There are also going to be midterm polls in the United States as well, Ambassador Freeman. Do you believe that, if at all, there has to be restraint being exercised by both Trump as well as Netanyahu to a much larger extent than we've seen? It could be the possibility of political backlash back home that might induce them to do that. Is that your assessment too?
I think that's correct. The midterms are coming up. There's an effort by the Trump administration to skew the results with various underhanded measures, but they will take place. And if you look at the polling data now, you would have to say that Donald Trump will be repudiated by the voters. They will vote against the MAGA Republicans. I note that the MAGA movement itself, the Make America Great movement itself, is splintered with former very strong advocates of Donald Trump and his positions now breaking with him and condemning him for this war and some other things that he's done. So I think, yes, this may also be the end of the Trump presidency in terms of its legitimacy and ability to command results. Yes, this is an earthquake politically, not only in Israel, but in the United States. We haven't, at this point, all we can do is say we watch. We can't tell what will happen, but it does not look good for the Trump administration.
If I may ask you a final question, sir, before I leave you, about Pakistan's motivations in all of this. Do you believe that Pakistan is compelled to project itself in a way as a broker in trying to forge some kind of a resolution to this conflict, also due to its own commitments to Saudi Arabia, because not very long ago they signed a defense pact pretty much. And Pakistan also comes with a track record, at least based on India's accusations and the experience that we've had in our neighborhood here, of facilitating its own proxy wars. What do you read in terms of Pakistan's motivations? What's your assessment about their skin in the game as far as this conflict is concerned?
Well, I think Pakistan has two major motivations here that are apparent. One with regard to the United States, to repair a relationship that had been quite bad. I think the Pakistani military leader has done a pretty good job of buttering up Donald Trump. And now, with the assistance of the Chinese, assisting the United States to make, if not a graceful exit, some sort of credible exit from a war that has turned out to be most unfortunate for everyone. There will be no winners from this war. The other motivation, however, is more interesting in a sense, because it's longer term. The meeting in Islamabad between the Pakistanis, the Saudis, the Egyptians, and the Turks was significant not only for its discussion of peace in West Asia and empowering the Pakistani foreign minister to go to Beijing, as he did, to reach an agreement with the Chinese on how to approach this, but also because one of the main motivations of this defense pact is to build military industrial capacity in the region that would make it independent of American or other foreign influence. And of course, the key pact was bilateral between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. Pakistan's military technology, the more advanced forms of it, are Chinese derived.
Yes.
So this forecasts a much greater Chinese involvement in arms sales in Saudi Arabia. When you see Turkey there, Turkey has a very highly developed industrial capacity. It's building its own fifth generation fighter aircraft, the Khan. Egypt is also very proficient in particularly heavy weaponry. So if you put these four together, you have the basis for an alternative military industrial complex. And I think that is one of Pakistan's main objectives, since Pakistan's economy has been on the ropes for a long time.
Absolutely. We'll wait and see as to how things unfold. It's extremely fluid as we speak. There's, of course, a pall of gloom and uncertainty that prevails over that region as we speak. Many thanks, Ambassador Freeman, for sharing your insights with us.
It was an honor.
Thank you, sir.